Excellent. Sure.
Right, good morning again. I am Victoria Kuhn. I'm the Commissioner with the New Jersey Department of Corrections, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time this morning. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and folks can just filter in the virtual room as they become available. I do want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us this morning. Again, this is our second public status update regarding Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. We are grateful for your time this morning. If you're joining us this morning, you are likely aware of the settlement agreement that we entered into a little better than a year ago now in August of 2021 that appoints a federal monitor and provides specific requirements for compliance in a number of areas that impact those at Edna. And it enables this morning's public meeting. We're fortunate to have today's opportunity to report on the continuing progress at Edna, to provide insight into the initiatives that have launched, and to give better insight into where we are going. Some of you may recall when we were together at the last public meeting in March of this year, I placed significant emphasis on building a corrections community, both within the facility with our officers, custody staff, our civilian staff, our managers, and our leaders, and with outside stakeholders, our unions, our advocates, legislators, our reentry partners, and our community organizations, with educators, our mental health community, our medical community, our formerly incarcerated, and with a number of you that are joining us today. We asked for your input and you absolutely delivered. We have been incredibly fortunate to have worked with you over the last 6+ months, and your voices, your input, and your support have been important components in the positive changes that are happening at Edna. On behalf of the entire department, we thank you for giving us your time, your talent, your resources, and your dedicated service. We are pleased that our corrections community is widening and it is strengthening. I very much want to acknowledge the team that is joining us here this morning. We have members of the team that are joining us here in person on Central Office grounds in the Harris Auditorium. We have team members that are joining us virtually this morning as well. I do want to say this team has synergy and energy, and they are truly dedicated to establishing a culture that better supports those in our care and reinvests in our staff. So joining us in person this morning, we have Acting Deputy Commissioner Willie Bonds. Deputy Commissioner Bonds oversees the entire Division of Operations. He has 25 years of essential operations experience. He is incredibly thoughtful in his approach. And while I've congratulated him probably no less than 1,000 times this week, I am happy to announce that Willie Bonds was recently promoted to the Acting Deputy Commissioner position. We have Assistant Commissioner Helena Tomei joining us this morning. You have met her before. AC Tomei is the Assistant Commissioner of our Women's Services, and she is all things Edna Mahan Correctional Facility, and you will be hearing a great deal from AC Tomei this morning. We have Assistant Commissioner Kelly Daniels joining us this morning in person. When we were together in March, AC Daniels was very new to the department. She has now been with us for over 6 months. But Kelly, I suspect it feels like it's been a lot longer than 6 months as the Assistant Commissioner of our Special Investigations Division, where she has successfully launched the Special Victims Unit. She has tackled PREA investigations, among other initiatives, and you will have an opportunity to hear from Kelly this morning as well. We have a newly appointed Chief of Staff joining us this morning. Christina Cebenko was appointed as the Chief of Staff in June of this year, and she joins us after having previously served as the Director of Employee Relations for the Governor's Office, where she worked very closely with unions, had worked on staff issues, and she has quickly become involved in all things Edna, including staffing and other efforts that you will hear more about this morning. We have Erica Stem joining us in person this morning. Ms. Stem is the administrator of Edna. You have met her before. She and her administrative team and the staff at Edna are doing a tremendous job, I mean that sincerely, of reimagining what the experience is for those that are housed at Edna. I'm also excited to welcome the recently appointed ombudsperson, Terry Schuster, who is joining us this morning. The ombudsperson's office is an independent body. They are not a part of the Department of Corrections. They have the ability to take a deep dive into many aspects of the department, make recommendations, issue reports, and you will have an opportunity to hear from Mr. Schuster this morning. And last but certainly not least, joining us in person, we are joined by Jane Parnell, the appointed federal monitor who is both well-respected and well-established. And I will be turning the program over to Jane in just a moment. Joining us virtually, we have Shirley Smeal from the Moss Group. Shirley is a well-established leader in prison reform. She is a true expert in the field. And we have Tia Ryans joining us this morning. Ms. Ryans is a very active chair of the Edna Board of Trustees, and we look forward to you hearing from her this morning. And then you have me. You have met me before. I come to this position by way of previously serving as an assistant prosecutor, as a deputy attorney general, as a former EED director with the Department of Corrections, a former labor relations director with the Department of Corrections. I am an attorney. When we were together in March, I was the acting commissioner for the Department of Corrections. In May of this year, I am pleased to report that I was confirmed as the commissioner of the Department of Corrections. Just want to pause for a second to thank Governor Murphy, the Murphy administration, the Senate, all those that have put their faith and their trust in me. I know that I have said this many times before and very publicly that I do not take this position lightly. And I and this team that you see, we are all very committed to positive change. Before I turn the program over to Ms. Parnell, there are a couple of updates that I would like to provide this morning, just updates from where we've come since we were last together in March. One of those is Board of Trustees. When we were together in March, we had just announced the new members of the Edna Board of Trustees. They are all simply powerful women in their own right, but collectively, and what we are witnessing over the last 6 months they are a powerhouse of change. The board has been very active. They are meeting, they are visiting the facility, they are meeting with the women at Edna, they are developing plans, and you will have an opportunity to hear from Tia Ryans this morning. Also, when we were last together, the Empowering Women Speaker Series had just launched with the absolutely amazing Janine LaRue as our inaugural speaker. Since then, we've had the honor to continue the series on a monthly basis with advocates and activists, entrepreneurs, authors, and with our most recent speaker being Tia Ryans, an advocate, an author, a business owner with a powerful and empowering voice and a true connection to Edna. Because I spend so much time at Edna, I can tell you personally by attending the speaker series, it has been well attended and well received by the women, and it continues. And we are very excited to bring new voices to the women at Edna. We are continuing to advance our efforts in the area of gender services, including plans for the hiring of a gender specialist and a reworking of the gender housing policy in order to provide an individualized assessment and determination regarding housing placement based on gender identity. As I previously mentioned, I'm also continuing to meet regularly with the women at Edna. That is one of the highlights of my position. It's important to hear their voices. It is important to incorporate their recommendations. They are an active group, an intelligent group, an engaged group. They are critical in the overall reform efforts, and their voices are being heard. And perhaps last but not least, in terms of my updates, is an update on the plans, the status of the plans for the next facility. When we were together in March, I would say that the status of the facility was probably the #1 question that I was being asked about Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. That's really no longer the case as we have developed cultural changes and advanced training. We're working with the staff and women to develop initiatives and programs and incentives by bringing in the community and advocates and stakeholders. Much of what we're discussing these days are those cultural changes. But I really want to emphasize the infrastructure at Edna remains challenging, and without question, it requires a new facility, which also requires very appropriate upfront planning. So the current status, we have continued to work with CGL, the expert and the consultant, who's developing the overall parameters for the next facility. And that process is nearing an end. To date, the consultant has reviewed available property and will have a final recommendation for a site. He has completed the visioning sessions with stakeholders, both within the department and on the outside, including staff, the women of Edna, formerly incarcerated advocates, reentry organizations, legal organizations, members of the legislature, and hopefully with some of you that are joining us this morning. The final step has been a recently completed and very thorough review of bed space and housing needs and advancements in prison reform, including family reunification areas, reentry programming areas, and long-term care areas. So the final and the next step will be securing the final recommendations from the consultant, which we expect to occur within the next couple of weeks, and then processing the recommendations through very appropriate channels. So this is, it's been a couple of months in process, but it's a very exciting time for me, for the team, to be able to bring these changes to the women of Edna and to the state of New Jersey. So you're joining us this morning, not just to hear from me, but to hear updates from everyone who is joining us. And we look forward to hearing your questions as well. So again, I thank you for joining us. And at this time, I am happy to introduce Jane Parnell.
Thank you, Commissioner Kuhn, and congratulations on your appointment. We're very happy with that. For those who have met me before and have heard my background, I apologize for the redundancy. For those who haven't, let me just give you a little bit about who I am, what my role is in terms of the settlement agreement, a little bit about why the settlement agreement came out, and then more importantly, we'll talk about kind of how this next hour and a half are going to go. Again, my name is Jane Parnell. I come from the state of Washington. My background experience in corrections has been entirely in the state of Washington. Started as a correctional officer so many years ago, I would be embarrassed to tell you the actual date, but worked for 35 years in the Department of Corrections in various divisions, including central office. Clearly the highlight of my career, both in terms of what I feel like I accomplished the most and what was the most satisfying for me, was to work at the women's prison in Washington State. I was there as the deputy warden, and also then as the warden for a total of 12 years. I think it's important for people to know that during the time I was the warden, our facility was under a settlement agreement as well. That settlement agreement was a result of staff sexual misconduct with the incarcerated persons living there. And I think that's important because I think it's important for the federal monitor to have experienced that experience. I really know what it's like. I also know how the outcome can be so positive. As horrible as the situation is that brings us to settlement agreements like this, the outcome was incredible. We got resources that we had been asking for. We put in place processes and procedures that are still occurring now, several years later. At the end, I can tell you that every incarcerated person living in that facility and every staff working in that facility felt like it was a safer, better place to be. And so I just look for that. There is light at the end of the tunnel for those of you who are at this table. And again, my belief is the culture changes that are occurring, that I've seen occurring, my belief, and that's one of the questions that sometimes the incarcerated women ask me as I'm at Edna, is what happens after you leave? And I truly believe in this team and in the work that this team's doing, that it's not going to go away. In terms of the settlement agreement itself, I just want to explain for those who are not aware, it was an investigation conducted jointly by the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of New Jersey. And the Department of Justice found reasonable cause to believe that the conditions at that time of Edna Mahan violated the 8th Amendment. And specifically, the Department of Justice concluded that Edna Mahan failed to protect the incarcerated persons from sexual abuse by the facility staff. So that was the rationale and the reason for the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement itself is a 3-year agreement between DOJ and DOC, approved by the federal court, agreeing to take some actions in order to make the facility sexually safer for the incarcerated persons to live and safer for the staff to work at that facility. If you haven't gotten a copy of the settlement agreement, I'm sure that one can be sent to you. Very clearly, it's just very specific items that Edna Mahan and the Department of Corrections has agreed to do. In terms of my job, I was appointed by the federal court to kind of be the eyes and the ears of the federal court, if you will. My job is to write a report every 6 months and let the court know how the Department of Corrections and Edna Mahan are doing in terms of abiding by the specific agreements. This is as Commissioner Kuhn has mentioned, the second reporting period, or we've come to the end of the first year of the settlement agreement. That end was August 24th. So I've just completed this week a compliance visit. That compliance visit is pretty intense. I look at policies and procedures, but much more importantly, I talk to staff and talk to the incarcerated persons and ask specific questions about what they know in terms of abiding by the settlement agreement. And more importantly, how are things going? And is it safer? Do you feel safer now than you did a year ago? So the reporting period for this last 6 months was February 25th as to August 24th, as I've already mentioned. I have a month to draft the report. I think it's important for you to know that I send a copy of the draft to the Department of Justice and to the Department of Corrections. I want to make sure they know that what I'm saying, and there's an opportunity for them to provide feedback. And then I finalize the report, and the report is due to the court on November 4th. After that, I appear before the court and just talk to the judge who oversees the settlement agreement and give them my impressions. So that's who I am. That's what I see my role is. In general, specifically to my role during this meeting, I think as Commissioner Kuhn has mentioned, the first 60 minutes is just going to be for you to have the opportunity to hear various speakers who have a role in some part of the settlement agreement at Edna Mahan. The last 30 minutes will be open to your questions, comments, and also suggestions. You can chat your questions, and some of you have done that. For those of you who are in the audience, you can ask them, write them down. Please remember to remain on mute if you're listening virtually, and remember that the meeting will be recorded. I also understand that the opportunity for questions will not end at the end of this session. In fact, is my understanding, they'll be open until Sunday. And so if you don't get a direct answer during this 90 minutes, you will get an answer to your question. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to newly appointed Deputy Commissioner Willie.
Thank you for that introduction, Jane. Good morning, everybody. My name is Willie Bonds. I am the Acting Deputy Commissioner for the New Jersey Department of Corrections. In my role, I have the distinct responsibility for the overall management of the Division of Operations, which includes all 9 of our facilities, as well as direct oversight of the Health Services Unit, the Special Operations Group, among a variety of other duties. I joined the department in January of 1998 as a correctional police officer, and have since had the pleasure of serving in a variety of capacities, including several custody supervisory positions, associate administrator, director of operations, and assistant commissioner. Over the past year and a half, we have continued to improve the accountability for all individuals that are within our facilities, staff and the incarcerated population alike. The installation of a state-of-the-art video surveillance system is complete with 353 cameras, 700 views, and multiple viewing stations. In June of 2021, the body-worn camera pilot program at Edna Mahan reached full deployment with just over 190 body-worn cameras in rotation, equipping all custody staff on each shift who have contact with the incarcerated individuals. As a department, we are extremely proud of these accomplishments. The addition of these cameras has provided us with another tool to aid our ever-important mission of protecting both the incarcerated population and the staff assigned to Edna. It is important to note that body-worn cameras and fixed cameras are amazing tools, but ultimately, they can never replace the direct supervision of our dedicated staff. It is absolutely critical that we continue walking and talking. We continue to walk the facility and talk not only to the incarcerated individuals, but also with staff. These face-to-face interactions allow us to obtain critical feedback and gain access to viewpoints that would otherwise be lost to us. Another positive initiative I'd like to update you on is our video visitation program. Video visitation at Edna launched back in June of 2021, and it continues to be a success story. To date, nearly 500 video visits have taken place at Edna. These video visits have provided additional opportunities for the incarcerated individuals at Edna to strengthen familial bonds, community ties, and beyond our traditional offerings, such as in-person visitation, phone calls, traditional mail and emails, just to name a few of the ways that the incarcerated individuals maintain these ties with their loved ones. We look forward to continuing with the video visitation program, while at the same time looking for opportunities to improve upon it. After touching upon some of our success stories, I'd like to spend a moment talking about some of the challenges we have faced. 2.5 years into the pandemic, we are all too familiar with the challenges that the virus presents within a correctional setting. The department employs a COVID mitigation strategy that restricts activities and increases precautions based upon guidance from the CDC, the New Jersey Department of Health, Rutgers University Correctional Healthcare, and our internal health services unit. Some examples of our mitigation strategies are as follows: frequent sanitation of common areas for both staff and the incarcerated population, reminders to staff and the incarcerated persons about our mask mandates and our COVID-19 testing protocols, reminder to staff not to come to work if they are feeling ill. In-person programs have a limited and identified participant to staff ratio that helps us maintain proper social distancing. We reduce certain activities as needed and when determined inappropriate. Quarantine and isolation procedures are utilized for positive cases and close contacts, and we help screen upon entry into our facilities. Not unlike the communities in which we live, COVID has had a real-life effect on the daily activities within Edna. Despite the challenges presented, we strive every day to make Edna as safe as possible for both the incarcerated population and the assigned staff. As the commissioner stated in her remarks, the infrastructure at Edna remains challenging and without question requires a new facility. We are keenly aware and share in the frustration surrounding the infrastructure limitations that exist. For example, we made a decision to relocate individuals to a housing unit on the grounds of the former William H. Farber Correctional Facility, which now serves as a satellite to Edna Mahan. This decision was due to needed repairs of the Stowe building at the main campus of Edna Mahan. Prior to moving these individuals to the new location, we included representatives of the incarcerated population in the decision-making process. That included allowing incarcerated persons elected by their peers to tour the facility in advance to alleviate stress, anxiety, and address any concerns they may have in advance of the relocation. After receiving this feedback, the Stowe building was then formally depopulated, and the individuals were moved to the satellite just this past July. Additional incarcerated persons were relocated from Edna to the satellite out of concern for the well-being of the population as a result of high environmental temperatures. There are benefits to utilizing this space. The unit offers more natural lighting, central heating, air conditioning, and space for the population to engage in groups, activities. This building has the capacity to house 192 individuals and currently has a population of 107. Correctional facility management is challenging, and there will be times when conditions require us to make difficult decisions that are ultimately made with the best interests of the population and staff members in mind. In closing, providing appropriate living quarters, programming areas, access to medical and mental health services remain a top priority for us. In order to address unexpected challenges, we must be flexible as a department and always be prepared to pivot as needed. In an effort to lessen the impact on the population, we strive to be transparent as possible. We understand that transparency not only builds a level of trust, but it also fosters a positive environment that will ultimately benefit us in facing future challenges head on. Thank you, Commissioner, for this opportunity to speak to everyone this morning from an operations perspective. And at this time, I am happy to introduce Chief of Staff, Ms. Christina Cebenko.
Morning, everybody. My name is Christina Cebenko, and I am the Chief of Staff here at the New Jersey Department of Corrections. I would like to thank the Commissioner for giving me the opportunity, New Jersey Department of Corrections family and community. I've been with the department for approximately 4 months now. Prior to coming here, I worked as an attorney specializing in public sector labor law for approximately 17 years. And most recently, I worked as the Director of the Governor's Office of Employee Relations. As part of my duties as Chief of Staff, I'm directly responsible for the oversight of the department's Office of Employee Relations, Equal Employment Division, Office of Compliance, and Division of Training, Recruitment, and Professional Development. Staffing at Edna Mahan has been a priority for this administration. Staffing levels are continuously monitored and evaluated. Nearly 50% of the senior correctional police officers at Edna Mahan are female. And New Jersey Department of Corrections efforts to increase the number of female officers at Edna is ongoing. With recent law enacted, the New Jersey Department of Corrections is now able to hire custody staff directly through our own hiring process instead of proceeding through the Civil Service Commission. This gives us the ability to directly recruit, have continuing interactions with interested individuals leading up into throughout the application process, and have greater control over the process itself. The department's recruitment unit is offering numerous dates and times, including nights and weekends, to all applicants to schedule themselves for open interviews. This flexibility enables the department to empower the new applicants to schedule an interview session that works best for them and their schedules, creates added flexibility for caretakers, individuals who might be in school, currently working, and who may need transportation arrangements. The custody recruitment unit is focusing outreach on engaging female interest in the profession of a correctional police officer with the department. The department's female officers do outstanding work for the department, and the recruitment unit is working on updating advertising to show the success that these female officers have had at NJDOC. Recruitment unit will be producing and posting more recruitment photos and videos focusing on our female officers. As part of the process, the recruitment unit will be highlighting the opportunities that female correctional police officers can have at NJDOC and where they might not be able to get those at different institutions. In addition, in order to attract more females to the profession, the custody recruitment unit will be actively meeting with current women officers, female officers at the corrections department, including Edna Mahan, to discuss how they learned about the profession, what interests them in becoming a correctional police officer, and discussing any recruitment ideas that they may have to aid the unit in attracting more female applicants. They will be enlisting the support of senior ranking women officers or female officers from Edna to participate in recruiting events and career nights, which may be in person or virtual, to share their experiences with the female applicants and answer questions. They will be identifying specific approaches and organizations with whom to collaborate in order to target female applicants and inviting them to informational meetings. The unit will also be partnering with outside agencies for concepts on women recruitment and retention. Also, to prepare applicants for the physical components of the training academy, the custody recruitment unit will be providing interested applicants with information on the pre-employment preparation program, which we call the Pep Program, which is offered by the Office of Training. Pep Program is a voluntary program offered to candidates to help them prepare for the physical training component of the academy. It's scheduled during the 3 months leading up to the academy start date, with multiple sessions held each week to best accommodate candidates' schedules. The purpose of the program is to prepare the candidates to successfully pass the mandatory Police Training Commission physical fitness assessment. DOC staff will work with each candidate on exercises, nutrition, proper warm-ups, stretching through the duration of the program. This time, I would like to introduce Assistant Commissioner Kelly Daniels.
Morning. Good morning, everybody. It is such a pleasure for me to be here to talk to you about the Special Investigations Division. I am so sincerely thankful to Commissioner Kuhn for giving me this opportunity, because there are so many exciting things that are going on right now at Department of Corrections, and I am thrilled to be a part of it. You've heard the Commissioner talk about reinvesting in staff, the community, reentry, Well, there's also really big things happening in the Special Investigations Division. And at the last public meeting, the commissioner had mentioned that she wanted to start a special victims unit. Well, guess what? She kept her word. We have launched a special victims unit within the Department of Corrections by mid-April. And by the first week of May, it was fully functional. This is a big deal. I'm not sure how many corrections systems in our nation have a special victims unit. I know we're not the first, but I also know that we are among the few. And the creation of a special victims unit in New Jersey is innovative. It's forward thinking. It's really trailblazing. And here's why. The Special Investigations Division, SID, of our department is made up of more than 90 sworn law enforcement officers who have full police powers. We are the department's internal affairs division. Think of us as detectives. We investigate all violations that occur within our facilities, such as violations of rules and regulations, violations of the administrative code, violations of the criminal law. We investigate staff. We investigate incarcerated persons or anyone who commits an offense while on our departmental property. Every prison has a field unit with its own SID staff on site. Now, SID does not report to the prison's administrator. SID has its own chain of command. SID is separate and we are confidential. Our responsibilities are diverse. We never know what any given day is going to bring us, frankly. It's not uncommon that in the morning, an SID unit could be investigating, for example, someone failed to write a necessary report. And now by lunchtime, maybe they are videotaping a high-risk movement within a prison. And maybe by the end of the day, they're investigating a sex abuse allegation. But here's the point. A sexual abuse investigation is not the same as an investigation for failure to write a report. Sexual abuse cases, they are complex. There are complicated dynamics. And to investigate these cases, you need specific training and you need it specifically addressed to sexual abuse. Folks who do that kind of work need to develop a relationship with their local prosecutors' offices because these cases require quite a bit of significant legal resources. Imagine if a search warrant is needed or something along those lines, there needs to be that relationship to foster that, to accomplish that goal. We need, in essence, investigators to become experts in this field so that they are investigating only sexual abuse cases and they are receiving specific, ongoing, updated training. And so here's where the trailblazing part comes in. Enter our SVU unit. They are located in a separate office, distinct from all other field units. They alone now investigate sexual abuse allegations throughout our prison system. The unit itself, the Special Victims Unit, SVU, is made up of one principal investigator, the supervisor, and 8 investigators. 3 are female. They all voluntarily applied for their SVU position. 4 out of 9 of them actually transferred from Edna into the SVU unit. So the point here I'm trying to make is that they are an SVU because they want to be an SVU and their dedication is showing. Under the leadership of Principal Investigator Gregory Cirillo, they have helped to clear a backlog of cases that existed at Edna when they were formed. If we look at some statistics that we report under the consent decree, if we look at a period of time, so this goes a little beyond this reporting period, but if we look at from January of this year through the end of August, there were 54 new cases opened by SVU. Of those 54 cases, 37% had the same incarcerated person as a complainant. Of those 54, 32 have been closed in this period of time. Of those closed cases, none were substantiated, 20 were unsubstantiated, 12 were unfounded. Currently, we have 22 open cases. But the story is bigger than that because when we started in January, we actually had at that point 36 open cases. So not only did we close the 32 that I mentioned to you, we also closed out the backlog. And the reason we were able to do this, really the credit goes very much so to the Edna SID field unit, because you can imagine as they're investigating sexual abuse cases, they're also investigating all these other things that I mentioned to you. So when SVU finally got up and running, they actually could catch their breath and they could catch up on their cases. Over the past few months, all of the investigators in SVU have received specialized sex abuse training. This includes the PREA training created by the Moss Group and endorsed by the Monitor. I attended that training myself, and I have to say I really did enjoy it. My favorite part was when they taught about the brain on trauma. And it's critical that investigators are trained on the effects of trauma on the brain because it reinforces a victim-centered approach to sexual abuse investigations. Lessons that every investigator needs to know when they're investigating sex crimes is that no one person reacts the same way to trauma. An investigator must never hold judgment or apply a personal standard to a victim's response or reaction. Svu Specialization has also worked to improve the time in which our investigations are completed. In some cases, this leads to officers being returned to duty quicker following their reassignment after a false PREA allegation. This also works to discourage false allegations. The incarcerated population sees that the weaponization of PREA is effectively being disarmed through the tools available to us, such as our state-of-the-art video surveillance system and our body-worn camera footage. Now, in many cases, SVU can swiftly and with certainty discount allegations. This is leading to a decline in the sexual abuse allegations at Edna. Between January and August, we averaged 7 new cases a month. In August, we opened just 2 new cases. Perhaps another reason for the decline is the commissioner's focus group at Edna. The commissioner meets regularly with the population. It gives them a chance to express their concerns directly to the commissioner. I've participated in some of those sessions, and what I saw was a group of women who were making suggestions with the genuine goal of improving their living conditions at Edna. Having the authority within the Department of Corrections, sitting there, attentively listening, taking notes, following up, that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes to the population. And meanwhile, AC Tomei also frequently and randomly pops in and walks around Edna. She says hello to the population. She listens to them. She's available to them. And this also gives them a voice. Treating incarcerated people with respect and listening to them, I believe, has also worked to de-weaponize PREA. This comes down to respect and professionalism. We do not place more value on one person over another. We do not discount a person simply because that person is incarcerated. We do not discount an allegation because the complainant has made a false allegation in the past. We are trained on the boy who cried wolf syndrome. We know that someone who's made a false allegation in the past is actually more vulnerable to victimization in the future. So we know we can never let our guard down. We know we don't give up. Even if the suspect is no longer working for the department or the incarcerated person has left our facilities, we forge on to validate. It's whether to sustain the allegation, to bring justice to the victim, or to clear a person who has wrongfully been accused. SVU is not to judge. We were formed to thoroughly and expeditiously conduct unbiased sexual abuse investigations, and armed with specialized knowledge, SVU is enabled to do the best possible investigation, and they are doing that. And that is having a direct positive impact on the department and the incarcerated population. And that's why I'm so pleased to be a part of it. And I am also pleased now to introduce AC Tomei.
Good morning. I am Elena Tomei, Assistant Commissioner of Women's Services and the Agreement Coordinator for the Settlement Agreement. So again, thank you for joining us today. Since our last public meeting, substantial progress has been made as we continue to focus on promoting best practices and embracing the vision of the department under Commissioner Coon's leadership. I would be remiss if I did not note that any progress we have made could not happen without the buy-in and dedication from the STEM, the leadership team, and staff at Edna Mahan. So in terms of developments directly related to our settlement agreement, since February, we've submitted our second 6-month status report to Ms. Parnell and the Department of Justice. We continue to implement and are working collaboratively to review several of our priority policies and procedures outlined in the agreement. We have redesigned and refocused our PREA unit. At Edna Mahan specifically, we've hired a full-time PREA compliance manager. Since her start date in March, she has hit the ground running. She has formalized orientation education for our incarcerated population, increased discussion groups with the population to make sure they're aware of their rights, as well as focus on staff's comfort level and understanding as it pertains to PREA. She is a knowledgeable and friendly face who believes in being visible, offers education and guidance, as well as listens to ideas for improvement to and from anyone at the facility. We have selected a candidate to be our agency PREA coordinator. Once hired, this person will oversee the operations of the PREA unit. They will serve as the lead source for understanding compliance and implementation, not only of the federal PREA standards, but all aspects of prevention, detection, and response to allegations of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and retaliation for the department. Between February 25 and August 24, 19 different training courses designed for custody staff were provided, which amounted to over 68 hours of total training. 10 different courses designed for civilian staff were also provided, which amounted to over 49 hours of total training. This included 16 hours of gender-responsive approaches for women offenders, which is a curriculum designed and delivered by the Moss Group. And we will continue to provide this curriculum and others, such as the specialized investigation training, by approved trainers within the department who received a special facilitation course. Some other training courses provided include trauma-informed corrections, PREA refresher, suicide prevention, resiliency, English, limited English proficiency. We recognize the importance of effective communication between staff and the incarcerated population, which may be impeded when language difficulties are encountered. To ensure that our population who is limited English proficient are afforded the ability to effectively communicate their needs, understand regulations, medical, mental health, social service issues, and access other essential services when on-site interpreters are not available, Edna Mahan provides interpreter assistance through a language translation service able to communicate in approximately 173 languages. To assist our population who is deaf or hard of hearing, a call-in service that uses video to allow for sign language between parties or through interpreters is in use at Edna Mahan to facilitate sign language translation for incarcerated persons. We have also ordered an alert system, which is a small device worn on a person's wrist. Staff will be able to send messages to the incarcerated person. The device will emit a vibration on the wearer's wrist, alerting them to the message. Some of the functions of the technology will serve to alert the individual about things such as appointments, institutional counts, meal times, medication distribution, emergencies. Outside of the settlement agreement, we recognize that actions are many times inspired by a desire to gain outside reinforcement and support by peers. In an effort to inspire positive choices and actions, structured incentive activities that offer special sustainable incentive activities for those in the population who remain infraction-free continue to be offered. Initiatives only become powerful if a person places an importance on the reward. So these activities have been structured to utilize rewards recommended by the incarcerated population. Activities include safe social gatherings and clubs, artful expression activities, and prize draw events. Additionally, services such as health navigation for those exiting within 6 months, advisory groups with the incarcerated population and staff, ongoing review of commissary items, and the reentry services, which the commissioner will speak on shortly, continue to occur. The last update that I'd like to share with you is, as the commissioner mentioned in her opening remarks, department has drafted a proposal to retain the services of a gender specialist to deliver high quality psychotherapy services using evidence-based interventions with specific training in gender identity. Our focus is to help LGBTQ+ and gender diverse incarcerated individuals heal, feel empowered, validated, and supported in finding their authentic gender identity and gender expression through counseling. Thank you for your time and your interest. We hope to continue to move forward with these reforms and continue to create a more transparent engagement. I would now like to introduce you to Shirley Smeal from the Moss Group, who is joining us virtually.
Good morning, and thank you, Helena. I'm Shirley Smeal. I am a senior project director with the Moss Group, and it's my pleasure and very excited to update you on behalf of Andy Moss, our CEO and founder of the Moss Group, to some of the priorities that we have been engaged in with Edna Mahan and the Commissioner and the Department of Corrections in New Jersey. Several initiatives have already been mentioned, and just want to highlight some of those top priorities that we are currently involved in or have completed. They include working with investigations and the SID team. We have delivered specialized PREA training to all of the SID members, including those working at Edna Mahan and within the Special Victims Unit. The investigators are also going to be participating in an upcoming PREA compliance manager training to further enhance communication and efficient PREA processes. As far as training is concerned, we have delivered a 2-day gender responsive training for the majority of staff at Edna Mahan to include custody, non-custody staff members, and the training to date has currently been for approximately 350 staff members. That training is ongoing and will continue to be provided to new staff coming on to Edna Mahan. And in addition, the 2-hour gender responsive training that we have is being updated to align with our new training, the settlement agreement, and the culture change efforts that are being made. The upcoming delivery of PREA compliance manager training for all DOC PCMs, including Edna, is going to take place September 29th and 30th, and we're very excited to bring that training to staff. In addition, we are currently working with conducting an evaluation on the data collection, and data collection is very important to monitor the progress that's being made, to see what's working very well, and to see where changes may be necessary. So we're reviewing the data collection points and efficiencies in alignment, again, with the settlement agreement provisions. Strategic planning is another area that we're very excited to be working in conjunction with the Commissioner's Office and the staff at Edna Mahan to address the settlement agreement regulations as well as desired outcomes and goals of the department. A strategic plan for women's services will be developed as a guide for Edna moving forward. And that strategic plan is really the anchor and the foundation of what's needed to continue the progress that has been made and to make sure that progress continues to be made in the future. It's a way of making sure that goals are aligned and not just stated, but also completed. So we're excited about working with the staff to develop the strategic plan and also to assist with the implementation of the same. The committee itself that's going to be working on the plan involves a multidisciplinary group of individuals from security, custody, programming, every area that is going to be impacted by the plan is represented or will be represented on the committee that is responsible for the development of the same. For policies, TMG has reviewed a number of policies that are critical to strategic planning. And these, critical to the settlement agreement and also strategic planning. They include the housing policy, PREA, and camera management. And we anticipate continuing to assist with the implementation and training of newly developed and newly revised policies per the Department of Justice feedback and also the Department of Corrections application. All of this is made possible of what we're doing, and we want to make sure that we are in touch with the individuals that need to and are significantly impacted by the directions and the policies, and that information, that communication is done through TMG's continued use of focus groups with the inmate population, with the women at Edna, and also with staff. So we are very pleased to continue to assist in this process and be part of progress and moving Edna Mahan as well as the department forward. So again, on behalf of the Moss Group, it's my pleasure to update you on the priorities that we have been working on and what progress has been made to date and what our future plans involve. So thank you. I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Kuhn.
Shirley, thank you. And honestly, thank you for all that you and Andy do for us. Good morning again, everyone. I'd like to turn our attention for just a moment to programs and reintegration initiatives at Edna. Dr. Darcella Sessoms, our Assistant Commissioner of the Division of Programs and our expert in all things programming and reintegration, is not able to join us this morning. She is also attending, along with Shirley, the Association of Women Executives in Corrections Conference, and she did provide some very important notes and asked that I provide a status update. So in addition to the continuing educational, vocational, college programs, social services programming, the continuation of the Health Navigator program through the NJRC and Rutgers, the residential community release programs that continue, and the many, many reentry initiatives. And we do want to thank our staff, our community partners for their exceptional work in those areas. Dr. Sessoms has provided some very special highlights to share with you in the areas of programs and reintegration. In April of this year, our Gender and Culturally Responsive Programming Unit completed its first cohort for the Releasing Trauma and Embracing Faith program. This was a new program, and it was really innovative and came out of those discussions that we were having with the women. The first cohort included 19 incredibly brave women who took the first step in completing 12 weeks of working through their pain and their trauma of the past. And the program continues. Currently, facilitators are moving forward with the program. They're actively working with additional cohorts. They're engaging in follow-up sessions with those who have completed the program. And I can tell you, being, feet on the ground at Edna and meeting with the women, not only do they ask for this program, they are thriving under the program. They have embraced the program, and as the very intelligent women at Edna do, they are asking for more. And I am certain that the Division of Programs will deliver. In April and May of this year, our Office of Chaplaincy Services in partnership with our Gender and Culturally Responsive Programming Unit, co-sponsored, the second annual Soul Sisters Conference for the women at Edna. This year's conference featured 13 motivational and spiritual speakers from the tri-state area for a 2-day interfaith summit on healing. The conference was well attended by the women. It gave them the opportunity to share their voices and to continue on a path of healing and wellness. On June 23rd, the Division of Programs sponsored a reentry fair at the Edna facility where our New Jersey lead reentry partners interacted with the population at Edna to connect and to aid with their transition into the community. On August 19th, the Division of Programs sponsored a kickoff event for the launching of a new entrepreneurship program. And we truly thank Tracy Syphax, President and CEO from the Block to the Boardroom, and Christopher C.J. Meehan, entrepreneur and educator at Babson College, for partnering with us to implement the 10-week course on entrepreneurship for those leaving Edna in the near future. And again, having the opportunity to speak with Edna, not only do we as a department feel incredibly fortunate to be partnering with the group, but the women are very excited about the launching of this program, and they are already talking about what their entrepreneurship possibilities are when they leave Edna. And last but certainly not least, in just a few days on September 21st, with the significant support and leadership of our New Jersey lead grantee, Communities in Cooperation. And they're truly amazing, and I mean that, Chief Executive Officer, Pastor Pamela Jones. Together, we're going to be launching the Leading Ladies Support Group, which will provide reentry readiness and support group discussion to our women at Edna. And again, these are just samples of what Dr. Darcella Sessoms provided as meaningful initiatives that are continuing within the Division of Programs. So a sincere thank you for the tremendous and deeply appreciated work by the programs team and by our community partners. And at this time, I would like to introduce Ombudsperson Terry Schuster.
Thanks so much, Commissioner. And thanks everybody for tuning in. I really am glad to be here. I'm glad to get a chance to introduce myself. I'm Terry Schuster. I'm the new ombudsman for the state prison system. Not everybody knows what an ombudsman is. An ombudsman means representative of the people. So in sort of similar to how the monitor is the eyes and ears of the court, the ombudsman can be the eyes and ears of the public for what's happening inside the prisons. And we want to try to do that well. So we'd really like to hear from you. We'd really like to connect with members of the community at our public meetings. And otherwise, we invite you to call our office. We have a hotline for family members of incarcerated people. The number is 888-909-3244. So it's an 800 number, 888-909-3244. You can Google us and find our website for the New Jersey Corrections Ombudsperson. So please look us up. We're coming up with our plan now for moving forward, which will be a combination of answering calls from incarcerated people and from family members, for individual calls for help and complaints to see if we can be helpful, for doing some systemic issue monitoring related to safety and healthcare and access to loved ones and engagement in purposeful activity. We'll be rolling all that out pretty soon in an annual report. So look for that. It should be coming out November 1st. And I'll look forward to all the questions that you all call in or write in with today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terry. And we are also, and I'm looking at our great OIT folks that are sitting in front of us that you are not able to see. Next up is, and I'm excited to introduce you to Tia Ryans, who is our Edna Board of Trustees chairperson. I'm just looking to make sure that she is ready to be teed up. Oh, there we go. Good morning, Tia.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone.
There we go.
Okay. All right, did you want me to jump in or were you going to continue speaking?
We are ready for you whenever you're ready to give your comments from the Board of Trustees. Thank you for
Okay.
joining us.
Perfect. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Tia Ryans, and I am the chair of the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility Board of Trustees. The designated purpose of the board is to develop long-term planning solutions, recommendations with regard to the needs of the institution. We, the board, have the authority to advance a long-range planning for medical care, training programs. We also periodically examine and recommend office advisement to existing programs, care, training, rehabilitation, as well as build structures, equipment, and other budgetary requests. Finally, we also control and determine the use of incarcerated populations' welfare funds. Our vision is to create positive cultural change by listening to the needs of the women and taking our cues from the incarcerated population, as well as being transparent. To be transparent. We take our roles very seriously. We take nothing at face value. So we question every single thing, every thought, word, intent, action, paper that comes across our desk that concerns the women at Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. And thus far, DLC has not denied any of our requests. We have encountered delays due to COVID, but to date, we've been able to conduct a listening session at Edna Mahan Correctional Facility so the population knows not only who we are, but feel our presence, be assured that we are there to support them, their needs, and their well-being. We've interacted with the ombudsman office so that we can work closely with them and the changes that they've proposed. We've also combined our diverse backgrounds as board members to use proactive measures to understand the needs of the population and how change would affect them and the ecosystem and promote sustainability. We do understand that our plan as the board in the next few months is to visit and walk through each housing unit, meal spaces, RHU spaces, medical spaces at Edna. As we move through the seasons, we'll continue to monitor the well-being surrounding heat and air, but we will also continue to use our roles towards genuine reform anchored by pragmatic transformative justice, and work closely with both the incarcerated population and members of DLC. We will just continue to push for transparency with DLC. Thank you.
Tia, thank you. As always, honestly, thank you for everything that you do. Tia has been, the Board of Trustees as a whole has been an incredible supporter of the women of Edna, the staff, the department, of me, of the team here. But Tia has been really very much boots on the ground, and I don't think has missed an opportunity to either lead an event or join us for an event. So again, I thank you to Tia and all of the Board of Trustee members. And Jane, that concludes the team that is going to be speaking this morning, but for the Q&A. So if I can turn it back over to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as a reminder, this is your opportunity to ask questions. Also give us some suggestions. So there have been some questions submitted prior. We're not going to get to all of them. We recognize that, but please hear that your individual questions will be answered. So if we don't get it on during this segment, you certainly will get a response. I do want to recognize there is somebody that said, I want to be a correctional police officer. So for those, get that person's name. And anybody else out there who has a child that needs a job, please, this is a great contact and opportunity to.
Can I, yeah, right?
Any-
For a second, the New Jersey Department of Corrections is recruiting, and I don't know who you are that asked that question, but I love you already. We are always looking for good people to join the effort. And I think that hopefully you can feel the energy. I know it's kind of hard over Zoom sometimes, right? To feel the energy. I hope that you feel the energy, in the department where we're going from a cultural perspective. So if you are interested or you know of anyone interested, please just go to the NJDOC website. And I don't think that you're actually able to enter the website without first looking that NJDOC is hiring, but we are actively hiring. We are looking to fill our next class in November. So please do so. Pass the word. Thank you, Jane. That you gave me the opportunity to plug.
And specific. Edna Mahan, you can maybe ask to work there. I talked to somebody yesterday, drives 2.5 hours each way to work because, and I said, why would you do that? He said, because I like the people, Edna. And so what a tribute, Administrator Stem, to you. And so again, if you're looking for a good place to work, New Jersey DOC, Edna. So there was another question about what are the department's greatest successes and challenges over the 6 months. And I'm hoping that maybe you got the answer to that from some of these. If that's still a question, you know, particularly the challenges or something, please, again, let us know and we'll try to respond to that. One of the questions comes up, and I'm sure, again, this is in a lot of people's minds. It says rumors of Edna Mahan closing have been looming for years, with major incidents happening as frequently as they do. Is there any timeline of when it may close?
So I love the question, Jane. I know I touched on it in my comments that infrastructure, you know, in spite of all of the amazing things that are happening there, the amazing things happen in spite of the challenges that we have with the infrastructure there. And those challenges, you know, as much as we manage through them, and I credit Deputy Commissioner Bonds and Administrator Stem and so many others for working through the infrastructure challenges, they still exist. So the Governor Murphy has been very clear that the facility will close. It's not, will it close? Yes, it will close. It's a matter of when will it close. During my comments, I had given the timeframe of where we are right now with CGL and our consultant. His recommendations will be finalized within the next couple of weeks. And that's the planning piece of it. You have to be very intentional upfront with the planning piece in order to be able to move on to the next piece. So as soon as we have those final recommendations from CGL, we will have the opportunity to then push them forward to all of the individuals in the state, you know, that will have the next round of input into what that looks like. And then we will keep pushing forward. But I feel incredibly fortunate that the governor, you know, has been on the record with closing the facilities. I know we feel very strongly that the facility needs to close and that the women deserve, you know, a new facility that meets, quite frankly, you know, what prison reform looks like these days, the reimagining of what prison looks like. So I hope that that's a sufficient answer, because we can't give the date that we're going to break ground on a new facility that's somewhat outside of our control, but that's where we are from the status.
Well, there's a part 2, another question. So as long as we're on that topic, we'll just ask that question as well. And again, you might not be able to go into all the details at this point, but the question is, are there plans for multiple locations and or any plans to leave part of the current facility in its place?
I can only definitively speak to the second part of that question. There are no plans to leave any portion of the current facility in place. Once we proceed, Edna, as we know it, will not exist in that area any longer. As to what CGL is going to make for the ultimate recommendations, I cannot speak to the first piece, not yet.
Sure, absolutely. Someone asked, what types of changes have come from department leaders' meetings and focus groups with the women at Edna Mahan?
I love that question.
Who wants to take
Do you
it?
want to start? Do you want to? Sure. I'd love to speak to my meetings with them as well.
Yes. Well, I think that number one, communication, right? To know the expectations, developments, that in of itself is trauma informed. And you feel a lot more comfortable and anxiety is decreased when we share what we can share with the population and the staff. What specific things that have come out meeting with the population have been the structured incentive activities. They're the ones who gave us the idea. They're the ones who tell us what they're anxious about and nervous about for other in other areas, which resulted in increased education and awareness. Before we had these meetings, especially for the population, PREA was just another, 4-letter word. Yes, they were educated on it. Everyone receives that education, but now they have an opportunity to be able to really delve into it and ask specific questions. And, is this a PREA violation or isn't it? So I think that helps and has come directly from being there, walking, talking, and having those focus groups. We also talked about the gender specialist position that we are going to recruit for. That came from a focus group. That was a need that was identified by the population. We delved into it and we're moving forward on it. The Empowering Women Speaker Series. It's nice to feel a connection to the community, to women who come and take time and share their stories. And it helps alleviate stress and anxiety of those that are coming out into our communities, again, knowing what to expect, leaving inspired, recognizing sometimes we've had some very powerful speakers, that very emotional presentations. So it's therapeutic. And would you like to pick up from there?
I would love to. So what AC Tomei has, very effectively communicated is that a lot of those early meetings with the women, those discussions were very active in terms of, and I don't want to minimize it, but creature comforts. They had been the ignored population for so long that they were talking about, when can I have a knitting group, a book club, does the public know what we're experiencing here? How can we be heard? And as we've been able to really develop those things with the input from the women, the trauma groups that have come out of there, they have really helped us develop what their programming should look like, what their day should look like, that my discussions with them now are so much deeper. It's about where they're going, thinking ahead, what reunification may look like, what reentry looks like. It can be a nervous time for individuals that are going back into the community again, encouraging them to enter the residential community release programs, to start that process, to develop savings accounts. We talk about societal matters. What does prison reform look like nationwide or globally? And what does sentencing reform look like? I mean, not just for the women, but they may be impacted.
It's a public hearing.
Then others may be impacted. So
the
those
Fed is watching us.
because
So
I think we may have some feedback, folks. Yeah, okay. Because we've had the ability to tackle those day-to-day pieces, we now have the ability to start to really speak with them about some of the bigger pieces, and things like sentencing reform and reintegration are really things that they are interested in. And I know we always give them homework, and then we come back, in a couple of weeks and we talk about the homework, but they are such an intelligent, plugged in group that it really makes sense, to do that, because they are invested, and they're part of the change. So love that question also. We've had some really good questions.
And that was one of the reasons I love working with women, is they are not shy about sharing their ideas, their thoughts, their concerns. You just get so much energy. I do when I talk with them. And this might be another change as a result of the focus groups. And so I'll tag this question with that. Regarding the gender identity-based housing policy, please describe the process and metrics for reviewing policy, including who has in the policy.
So in terms of reviewing policy, we do have a policy review system here at the NJDOC, and ultimately a new policy will hit the desk of the executive board members that folks see today. For the particular gender housing policy, I worked more closely with operations, AC, Tomei. And and I think we've had a couple of public comments about the policy as well. It just requires some minor tweaking, and we have done that as a department. We've also, I believe it was during the budget hearings, indicated that we would be sharing ultimately the policy with some of our outside stakeholders. We will still do that before the policy is finalized, but there is also a process outside of the department that must take place before that happens. So right now, policy review, we have shared with Ombudsperson's office, and Terry is always fantastic. We've shared with some others. The policy is in a final draft form, but it will go through legal review, which is happening right now. Then when we get it back, we will have that opportunity to share with outside stakeholders, but we will not proceed without doing that first.
It might be also interesting for people to know that there are several policies very specifically outlined in the settlement agreement that I have provided feedback to, will continue to provide feedback, and also the Department of Justice does the same. And those are both agency policies and Edna, what they call level 3 policies. So that's certainly a review as well. There was a question, will ground inmates, and ground means minimum security inmates, that are moved to the new facility that Deputy Commissioner Bonds talked about, will ground inmates be separated from the medium and max inmates, since they shouldn't be mixed together?
So as the commissioner alluded to earlier, we're still in the planning phases for a new facility. So we're not at the point where we're ready to share certain details about the configuration of the facility. However, just like any other housing assignment, what we can say, determination for housing assignments are made based upon classification designations in conjunction with medical needs, mental health needs, the operational needs of the facility. All of those factors are taken into account before we make assignments. And that will certainly be the case when we move to a new facility.
Anybody? Okay. This question specific for AC Daniels. And AC Daniels, somebody said that you mentioned the boy who cried wolf. And can you clarify how many inmates have been charged with falsifying statements, as well as the status of those charges?
Yes. As I indicated when I spoke earlier, in the period of time between January and the end of August, there were 54 new allegations of sexual abuse that SID opened and investigated. And of those cases, 37% were from the same incarcerated individual. So one person has been charged with falsifying, providing false statement to a law enforcement officer. And that is not taken lightly. This is a case where it was 100% irrefutable that the allegation did not occur. We felt that we took an assessment and felt that we should charge in that instance, because really what it does is it also discourages victims who have real legitimate complaints from coming forward, because what it does is it minimizes their complaint, because if they see that there are false complaints that are coming through, it makes them feel like their complaint is not going to be taken as seriously, because maybe our mindset is, well, so-and-so A made a false complaint, therefore we're looking at it through that view that perhaps we have another false complaint. They feel that their own complaints are not being adequately heard. So we made a decision to charge that person. It was not taken lightly. That's why I said that we know that when people make false allegations, they are vulnerable after that point in time, because some people may say, well, they falsified before, I'm sure they falsified it now, and they just, move on. But our investigators are highly trained and they know not to let their guard down. So in terms of the status, it is with its pending court, and I don't have any update on that.
So Jane, I just want to add, it's a delicate balance, because you never want to silence a victim, We definitely want to hear, real legitimate concerns, but there have been times that the allegations have been so clearly inaccurate and drummed up that you have to take that type of action in order to give the PREA system some level of credibility. So it is that delicate balance. And I really do appreciate, how Kelly and team, have to balance, that, but they're doing a great job, with doing exactly that.
And I think my observation is that the body worn cameras and the stationary cameras that Deputy Commissioner Bonds spoke to is really a helpful tool for that. I mean, when somebody says this person came in to my, housing unit or my cell, and the cameras can prove that person wasn't there at all. I think that's really what I'm hearing from both the incarcerated population and the staff, is that they really appreciate that new tool that you have. There was a question, Commissioner, from staff about what happens when staff has been accused of a contact and that allegation has been unsubstantiated rather than unfounded. And does that still hang over their head? And are there concerns from staff's, or there are concerns from staff's advantage or viewpoint? Does that stay in their HR file, or does that prohibit them from being promoted? So could someone speak to that?
Absolutely. I think there's probably a number of us that would like to speak to that, because that's something that I think we had hoped that we had effectively communicated, but we've heard the same. So I think that we have to do a better job of communicating what happens at the end of those, PREA investigations. And I know that between Assistant Commissioner Tomei and Assistant Commissioner Daniels, there is a written process that's going to happen now, just so we can ensure that it is effectively communicated, so that we can allow staff perhaps the comfort in knowing, once the pre-investigation has concluded, that for those that are unfounded and unsubstantiated, there is no action being taken. It will not impact transfers, although we would like them to stay at Edna. It will not impact transfers. It does not impact promotional opportunities. But that, that conclusion, that anybody who's been subjected to an investigation, it is a trying time. So I think that we owe that to our staff, to be able to tie that up and let them know, what's happening at the end, and that if it will impact, why that is. But in most cases, in all cases where it's unsubstantiated and unfounded, it will not have that impact. But Helena, I don't know if you or Kelly would like to add anything to that.
Do you know, will it have impact? I hear you saying that for future promotions within the department. What about if somebody wanted to go act outside the department? Does anybody know if that would impact?
It's not a part of their personnel file. So first of all, I don't know why, Jane, they would want to be leaving.
I don't either. Why?
But for those that are potentially leaving, no, it is not a part. Please don't leave. For those that are, I think the chief of staff is agreeing with me. She's like, no, I'm doing everything I can for retention and recruitment. Like, please don't leave. It is not part of their personnel.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. There was a question that came in about thoughts about maternity. I think we're going to have that just directed individually, because I really want to end the session and being sensitive about people's time. One of the questions that came up, and I just thought it was perfect because we have Mr. Schuster here, and it's how has the department responded to the summer's intense heat? So that can be our final question for at least during the recording section.
Terry, would you like to start with, the overall framework with the mitigation report, and then maybe DC bonds, if you're comfortable? Yes.
Sure, yeah. So the Ombudsman Office early in the summer responded to some calls from community members and incarcerated people about the heat, and sort of asking us what can be done to draw some more attention to it. We connected with the department leadership and said we'd like to start monitoring temperatures this summer and see what that could look like. So we went into housing units in July and took temperatures in every housing unit. We paid sort of close attention to where was there air conditioning and where was there not air conditioning. And we're able to work really closely with Director Nardelli and others in the central office and with the facility administrators. We spoke with incarcerated people and staff about what it felt like, what was being done, what else they thought could be done in the short term, and maybe what might be needed long term, and tried to feed that information back to the department midsummer before, while we continued to collect temperature data in August, and put out a report with recommendations. The recommendations also included reflecting a whole lot of what the department had done in terms of really trying to step up places where more fans could be added, where air conditioning could be added, where more ice machines could be brought in, or more ice could be delivered throughout the day, where people could be offered more showers, things like that. And so our report is on our website. It's public. The department has continued to respond even since the report has come out, and is taking steps, I believe now, in the coming budget season to look at structural changes.
DC?
Thank you. So I'd like to thank the Ombudsperson's office for their report and our interactions on this very important issue. What it did, it prompted us to formalize some of the activities that we already had in place. So as a department, obviously, we take very seriously the conditions of confinement at all of our facilities. In this case, we're obviously talking about Edna. We're always looking for ways to improve the infrastructure, to make a better work environment for staff, and make the living conditions better for the incarcerated person. As you've heard earlier, you've heard infrastructure challenges multiple times, because that's just where we're at right now. Edna is an aging facility, so we have a lot of infrastructure challenges to overcome there. Like I alluded to earlier, based upon the Ombudsperson's report, what we did was double back on our efforts to make sure that we're doing everything we can to mitigate high heat situations. So some of the things that we've done in a formal manner, like I said, we've already been doing these mitigation efforts for years, but we just formalized it in one memo for all our administrators. So we monitor temperatures on a regular basis, at least once per shift. We make available additional fans to improve airflow throughout the facilities. We increase access to showers, fluids. We provide ice at no cost. These are all steps that we take once the temperatures reach above 86 degrees. We adhere to physician and psychiatry orders. We encourage the population to avoid activities where there's high exertion. We've added portable air conditioning units where possible. Going back to our infrastructure challenges, once again, unfortunately, that isn't something that we can do everywhere. There are limitations to our ability to add portable units. And we're looking at lighter weight clothing. And there's a myriad of other options that are continuously under consideration, as this is a very important issue for us. And we're trying to do the best that we can to stay ahead of it.
And Jane, if I can just piggyback that, because DC Bond said it really well. We understand that we have infrastructure issues, and we do everything that we can to address, what we have. And then, and we do make those capital requests, and folks are responsive, to that in many ways. Unfortunately, we cannot control the weather, wish that we could. But the operations team, I really wanted to give a plug to DC Bonds and his team. The operations team on a regular basis is meeting to discuss not just general infrastructure issues, but we're now coming into the fall, which is unfortunate because I love all things summer, but we're coming into the fall and then the winter. And the operations team already started, months ago talking about heat. What's the heat looking like in the facilities? What are the boiler systems looking like? Let's plan for those things. Just as they did last winter, starting to look for all things chilling, in the facilities. So it's unfortunate with infrastructure, it's a perpetual, what do we have to plan for this time? But they do a very nice job of forward thinking and having their boots on the ground in all of the facilities, conducting the inspections, turning on the heat, making sure, it's working. And inevitably a pipe will break somewhere. I don't want to curse us, but a pipe will break somewhere, this winter, and they will be all hands on deck. It always happens at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. And they will be addressing it, very effectively. But DC Bonds and his team really do a nice job of working with what we have and being proactive.
So maybe we'll be seeing a heat report, a cold report from the office. Okay, thank you so much for submitting your questions. Again, I apologize, we couldn't get to them all, but I will reiterate that we will get to your questions specifically in an individual manner. So Commissioner, do you want to close us out?
I would love to close us out this morning. So that does conclude our time together this morning. I want to thank everybody who is sitting, here with us this morning. Jane, I would like to thank you, for being very candid with us. I want to thank those that folks cannot see from behind the scenes. We have our external affairs, our OIT. Thank you for making this happen today. Thanks to Shirley and Tia for joining us remotely, and a very sincere thank you to all of you that are joining us today. It's the fact that you remain interested in the progress that we are making and the women of Edna and where we are going next is really what we need to be able to continue the cultural reform. So we appreciate your support. We appreciate your resources. We appreciate you working with us. And I think I'll close it out, Jane, on behalf of everyone that is here. Thank you all for joining us today. Please take care.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.